Welcome to Career and Leadership Real Talk, the no-nonsense guide for ambitious managers who want to have more impact and progress their career. I'm Pamela Langan, a job search coach and expert CV writer specialising in helping frustrated professionals land the jobs and pay rises they know they deserve.
And I'm Jackie Jagger, a leadership and mindset coach specialising in helping newly promoted and new to role leaders to avoid the dickhead trap and lead with confidence. Between us, we've helped hundreds of leaders and managers to find new roles, take ownership of their careers, and handle the challenges that job searches and leadership responsibility inevitably bring. And now we're joining forces to share with you what we know has worked for our clients. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode. We are talking today about why leaders struggle to say no. And this has come up time and time again in conversations with my clients. And I'm sure, Pam, it's also come up for some of your job search clients as well, because some of the consequences of this are some of the things that prompt people to end up moving roles. So we're going to be exploring how people get into this situation where they're struggling to say no, what it looks and feels like to be in that, and then some reflections and some things that you can maybe start to think about. So, Pam, what is this pattern that people have of struggling to say no? Where does it come from?
So I think it comes from early in your career when you're trying to make an impact, when you're trying to show that you can do all of the things and bring all of the value. And people get stuck in that cycle because once you become a yes person, it's really difficult to come away from that. And it's really difficult to then say no because you almost start to feel good when people ask you to do stuff and you're like, yes, I can take all of that stuff on. And then inside, you start to think, this is not working. I'm taking too much on. But I think it does feel good to say yes at times.
I think it feels flattering often if I reflect back on my career, and like you say, especially the early part, it feels flattering that people think you're capable, that people have noticed, that people see you as being the person that can solve this, that they trust you with it. And when you are ambitious and you want to build your career, it does work for you. This habit of saying yes to stuff and getting stuck in and rolling your sleeves up and getting on with things, that's what helps people to stand out and helps people to get noticed, because especially in the early stages, you're often given stuff that's maybe not that high stakes, stuff that maybe other people don't want to do, stuff that is maybe a little bit monotonous, or you've just got to grind out a result. So I think in those early stages, it feels flattering that people think you can do something, and you often generate a lot of goodwill, don't you? And a lot of career collateral by saying yes and by being the one that is prepared to take stuff on.
Yeah, definitely. Early on in my career, like I had a really strong network and I could get things done. And I became somebody who you could rely on to get things done because I always said yes. And because I also did things for other people and basically just didn't say no to anybody. So I was able to build really strong network on the back of that. But the cost of that was huge because I was always shattered, always had too much work on. And I think at some point within that, saying yes stopped being a strategy and just became part of who I was. And that was when it became difficult to stop it and to think about how I could start saying no at that point.
I think that's such a good point, where it becomes part of who you are. So it becomes part of your personality, part of your identity, and it stops being a conscious choice and just starts happening by habit. And habits can be great things, but they can also continue even when that habit or behavior doesn't serve you anymore. And I think what I see with clients is that when this has become a habit, when people have become the person that always say yes, like you say, it's almost an invisible yes. You've not even agreed to it. It's just happened because you will never be the person that will push back, because you will find a way to make it happen, because you will do the late nights, you will reprioritize, you will make stuff happen. And sometimes as well, it's cave-in because other people don't. Outside of work, I play and coach netball. And for years, I have coached, I have been the chair of my netball club. But a lot of the stuff that I've done there has been, I've been the first person to cave. This needs doing, I could do it. And I think that happens in workplaces as well, where there's a meeting and everybody's waiting for who's going to take this action. And if you're the person that blinks first, or you're the person that people assume can do it or will say yes, then you're the person everybody looks to and the pressure's on. And that's very easy to cave in that situation, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? When you're sat in a meeting and the actions are getting dished out and you can do those things, and some of them might be small tasks, some of them might be a bit bigger, but you also then see that opportunity to stand out and to show your value and your worth and all the rest of it. And I know I used to sit in those meetings and think, just say yes, because you can do it. You'll find a way, even if that meant logging on in the evenings and the weekends and all the rest of it. It was like, just say yes because it will benefit you in the future. But actually, in hindsight, and hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? In hindsight, I now know that wasn't the right way to play it. And I could have made more impact through saying no and through really questioning the things that I took on. But when you're in the moment, I think it's really difficult to figure out what you should say yes to and what you should say no to, because you get so caught up in the moment that it almost, you're blinded by what you think is progression, I think. And I suppose for anybody that's listening, like what this actually looks like in real life is probably quite important, isn't it? Because you might be thinking, I'm overworked at the moment, or I've got too much on, or we've not got enough resource in our team. But actually, if you break it down and look at how you're operating, is it just because you're saying yes to too many things?
And I think people often recognize that they're saying yes to too much or they've got too much on their plate. But what they may not realize, and if you're listening to this and thinking, like, yeah, this is me, I feel shattered, I know that I'm doing too much, but I just don't really know how to change this habit or how to say no to things or how to push back. And I think part of the problem is there's often a difference between what you know is happening versus what other people perceive or recognize is happening. So from the outside, you probably look like you have got it together. You look like the person with a great work ethic. You probably seem like you're a safe pair of hands. You are the person that is maybe calm in a crisis. So other people often don't really see the struggle that you might be experiencing internally. And I think that's probably why I get to hear about it in coaching sessions, is because I get the real individual. I get the person who's being honest with themselves, honest with me, in a way that maybe they find that really difficult because perhaps admitting to other people, this has gone on too long now, and I know I can't take on that additional thing, is if that feels harder to them than saying yes and finding a way to do it. And I think some of that comes back to what you were saying about identity, where, you know, if you're a high achiever, if you are that safe pair of hands, if you are that reliable person, you don't want other people to think less of you. And so even you've got this real like internal struggle, knowing that you've got too much on, knowing that you should push back or you should say no, but actually it's easier to just accept that pressure on your own shoulders than it is to get uncomfortable by trying to find a way to say no or to push back when you've always been that person.
Yeah, and I recognize this loads with within coaching sessions with my clients, and can totally relate to it from my own career. And I think high achievers don't give themselves permission to struggle. There's always that internal dialogue happening that says, I should be able to handle this because I am a leader and I am in the senior position, so I should be able to handle it. And you almost squash down all of those nagging doubts that come up that say you're taking on too much. This is definitely a step too far. and you just put your head down and you try and work your way through to the other side, and you just constantly head down trying to work your way through to the other side, that sometimes you never actually get to pop up the other side of it. And then you realize lots of time has passed, and career progression that could have happened for you hasn't happened because you've been in the thick of it with saying yes to everything, head down, working through. And at some point, you do wake up and go, hold on a minute. But by that point, sometimes it can be too late. Sometimes you catch it just in time. Sometimes you might listen to a podcast like this and think, wow, that is me. And I'm in the middle of this. And that's amazing if that's you, because you can start recognizing it and doing something about it.
And I think that's the bit that's really difficult. To recognize it is one thing, but to do something about it feels really tough. And I just want to go back to what you said about that sense of I should be able to handle this, because that when people are overwhelmed, overwhelm is a sign of too much. The answer is not to try and work your way through it. The answer is to pause and to understand what really does have to be done. And often that is going to require pushing back. But that pattern of trying to work your way through it is something that I recognize, where people feel like if I can just get through this month, if I can just get through year end, if I can just get through the next quarter, if I can just get this project done and the system live and the bugs dealt with, whatever it is, it feels like the straw that's risking breaking the camel's back. And people just do have that temptation to just try and get through this next bit, but then something else comes. So it is really important, if you are listening to this and recognizing, and I remember a client saying to me, and I was like, oh my God, that is horrible, but also horribly relatable. She was like, Jackie, I'm just governed by my diary. I just do whatever my diary tells me to do next. And there was no thought anymore. There was just trying to get through the day, trying to get through the week. And every additional meeting was, here's some more tasks, here's some more things to do. And there was no fight to try and push back. And there was also, I think, and I think this is also a contributing factor that we probably need to explore. I think in that case, there was also a sense of, when I do try and push back, people don't take it seriously. People are like, oh, yeah, but we'll find a way. And if you have been in that situation where you've tried to say, hang on a minute, this is all a bit much, it's natural, when you've always been the person that has reliably done things, that people, because outwardly, you know what's going on inside, but outwardly, like I say, people probably still see you as this reliable pair of hands. And so people are like, oh, we'll find a way. There's always a solution. We've got to be able to find a way. And so I think sometimes you can feel unheard, can't you, and not listened to.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest part. And a lot of that, I think, comes from those invisible yeses, where it's just assumed that you'll take on that work. And then when you start pushing back, people then start to say, oh, don't worry, we'll sort this. Or I always feel like, as well, it's quite a difficult situation to be in when you're in a leadership role and you have to go to your manager and say, what do you want me to do? Because you, like, almost like you can't manage your own diary. But it's not that you can't manage your own diary. You've just got such a huge amount of work to do that it becomes impossible. And I know in the past I've found that difficult myself, where I've just got so much on my plate here. Like, actually, what do you want me to prioritize? And I think from an ego perspective, like that wasn't a good feeling for me, to have to go to somebody and be like, I can't do all of this work. But when you break it down, it is something that you need to, it's almost like you need to take accountability for everything that you say yes to. And even the invisible stuff, because the invisible stuff it's assumed that you're saying yes to that stuff. And in the past, you might have just picked that up and run with it. So for me, like, having been in a situation where I was just saying yes to everything, and it was a part-time role. I was working way more hours than I should have been, and something slipped. And it was one of those invisible yes things that had slipped, and I was totally unaware of it, wasn't even in the office. And it was a huge drama. And I came back into that, and I felt so awful. It really knocked my confidence because I was like, oh my goodness, this is my fault. I haven't done this thing. But I was like, I don't actually really know what it is that I haven't done because somebody's assumed that I'm going to pick this work up. And it took ages to unravel it all. But then what I realized is in as part of this, I need to take accountability and responsibility because I'd allowed it to happen. And it was a really hard pill to swallow because I was like, this has happened to me, but in lots of ways I'd accepted it and let it happen. And since that point, and that was about 10 years ago now, and since that point, I am a lot more considered on what I will say yes to. And if I know I'm already at capacity and people ask me to do stuff, then I'm like, okay, I will have a look at what I've got on and I will let you know where I can fit this in and if I can fit this in. And sometimes it might be that it's not until a few weeks down the road that I can even look at it, or it's just about being more upfront and thinking about what that looks like when I say yes to something. And I suppose it probably links into what it's costing you as well, doesn't it? Because every time you say yes to something, it's costing you something, whether that's career progression, time, energy, whatever it is, every time you say yes, it's costing you something. So are you fully aware this moment in time, everything that you're saying yes to? And is it all relevant? Is it helping you? Is it moving you forward? And if it's not, at what point do you stop and go, hold on a minute, let's regroup, let's reassess, let's see what's going on?
Yeah, and I heard a brilliant story recently about a leader who had their on a whiteboard, I think it was, but something very visible anyway, that was key goals, objectives. Whenever somebody asked them for something else, they go, okay, these are our key goals for this period. I'm just going to write it on this list. And so next to it was a list of all the things that were being asked for the review when we consider the next phase. And I loved the idea of just making that really visible and explicit of here it is. So if you're telling me that you want me to do something, because most requests do tend to come from above. Most requests that people say yes to that they then struggle with tend to come from above. And so I really liked that point of, okay, I'll put it here for us to review next time. Are you telling me that it's more important than one of these? Do we need to swap one in and one out? Or is that where it's going to sit? And I think to have that discipline, I wish I'd have had that in my own career. I wish I'd have had that foresight to have had that. But I think that's the thing, isn't it? So many things you start off with you're already trying to achieve probably too many objectives, and then all these projects and additional things get layered in on top. And every time you say yes, like you say, you're saying no to something else. You're saying no to time with your family, or you're saying no to looking after yourself, or you're saying no to your own sanity sometimes. So, yeah, I think there's a whole heap of hidden costs that come with that situation. So, what are some of the things, if people are listening and they're nodding along and recognizing themselves in what we're talking about, what are some of the things for people to start to think about or maybe take action? If you've been this person where it's become a part of your identity, how do you take first steps to move on from that?
I think the first step is recognizing that you're in the situation. And even if you're like, oh, I'm not sure if that's me, then, it's still a good time to reflect and just look at everything that you've got on your plate at the moment and looking at the relevance of it. Like, what's it fitting in with? Is it the day to day job tasks? Is it something that's going to help you with career progression? Is it something random that you've managed to pick up? Just starting to sit and reflect about that situation or the situation that you're in at the moment is a good start. It's super, super important that you just take a pause and reassess what you've got on your plate. And I actually think it can be a real positive experience because you can go from feeling absolutely overwhelmed to, you know what? I've actually got a plan now. I know what I'm going to do. And sometimes you might need to break down some of the chunkier steps into smaller steps. But I think the first part of it is pause and get your head together. What do you need to do? I always have a cup of tea and cake or something, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? Let's get it all out on the table. Brain dump everything. Think when it's bashing around in your head, it feels so much bigger. And as soon as you start writing it out on a piece of paper or typing it onto a Word document, you can almost let it go onto the page and you can give yourself some headspace. So I think that's the first thing that I did back then, and that's always the first thing that I do if I ever feel overwhelmed or feel like I've taken on a little bit more than I can chew.
I really like that. And I guess in the moment, I think that's a really crucial step. The bit I would add is to ask for help. And I think once you've done that and you've distilled what are all the things that I've got, a big part of what happens when you've been used to saying yes to things and you've got too much on your plate is you will then tend to try and take that plan and enact it yourself. But if you genuinely have got too much on your plate and you have been saying yes to far too much, part of this is about what's actually going on within the organization, within the environment, within the system that you're working within. And I think a big part of this is about being brave and having a conversation that says, this is all of the stuff, and I am struggling. And that is a really difficult conversation. But do you know what? Pretty much every time that I've known people have that conversation, they have felt better for having it. And the longer you don't have that conversation, the harder it gets. And again, when I take myself back, hands up, I left this conversation far too late, where I had so much going on in one role, so many plates that I was trying to spin. And it pretty much took my boss to step in and actually tell me, you need to accept some help, rather than me being the one to say, hang on a minute. And often I think when you take ownership of it and look at, these are all the things that I've got on, these are all the things that are in my head, this is what needs to happen. Somebody needs to know that. And you can often ask for support and find that either it's there, or if it can't be, you might not be able to get additional resource, you might not be able to get additional budget. But if there's at least that understanding, what that can do is provide a little bit of air cover and a little bit of a shield from that person asking more of you. Because 9 times out of 10, your boss is in the same boat and they're so busy saying yes to things that they don't think about all the things that are on your plate. But if you lay them out and show them, this is all the stuff I'm trying to handle, then what that can do is, even if they can't resolve that and you're trying to enact that plan yourself, it can at least reduce some of the other things and provide a little bit of protection from additional asks that would have come your way.
Yeah, definitely. And I always think coaching's useful in these kinds of situations as well, because sometimes you just need that third party that isn't working with you, that can question you, can help you to come to a conclusion and get everything in order. And I always find coaching is really helpful. And we've both worked with a whole range of clients in a whole range of situations, and seeing those light bulb moments and those moments of clarity for people when they suddenly go, oh my goodness, it doesn't have to be like that. I can make this change. I can make a difference. I can work in a slightly different way. And the results are huge, aren't they?
They really are. And sometimes I remember having a conversation with one person where actually the result was, I know this is not just about me, this is about the organization. And so sometimes that's about, I need to make different choices and I need to stop waiting for things to change where I am. I need to be the one to have agency and take ownership of creating the opportunity where I'm in an environment where the opportunities that are offered are the right ones rather than the wrong ones. So if coaching is something that you'd like to explore, then please do get in touch and we can give you the options. We also have another episode that gives some more practical steps that can be helpful around setting boundaries and saying no and pushing back, which is episode 82. So we will link to that one in the show notes. And if there are topics that you would like us to cover on the podcast, then do drop one of us a message. We're just about to set up our planning for the next quarter, and we love to make sure that we're including episodes that are responsive to what is going to be most helpful for you. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next time with another episode.